What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another NBA Rundown brought to you courtesy of Run Pure Sports and Run Pure Bets. I'm joined today by AP. AP, how's the NBA season been treating you so far?
It's been good. Been a ton of fun. A lot of fun things going on in the NBA right now. The Heat have looked like a phenomenal team, and then we get a game like last night where they didn't have it. And the Celtics got the best of them. But no, it's been good. It's been good so far in DFS. I think members over at Run Pure Sports are having a lot of success and yeah, we got a nice 9 game slate tonight to break down.
All right, well, let's get right into it. Do a quick recap. So yesterday we had a little problem. I gave out I gave out who I was leaning towards, but I didn't get the best bet as either JSU's internet went down or my internet went down. But I just X'd the whole thing. But regardless, people knew that I liked the Rockets, and wow, was that a tough beat there? They're up at halftime. They lose by 17 in the second half. And then you and I had talked a little bit because I jumped in the chat during your Hardwood live show on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. And we both liked that Lakers over. So I hit that one pretty hard. And it came in like, what, 2 to 3 points short. We were really destroyed by the Oklahoma City just getting out to such a slow start. I think only 21 points in the first quarter, which is wild because they won, right? And if you told me that's a close game, I like that. I like that bet even more, right? If you tell me that the Oklahoma City doesn't get blown out, did you happen to catch either of those evening games? And especially talk to me about the Lakers because that was, of course, the talk of Twitter after they lost last night.
Yeah, I caught both games. I wish I would have spent a little bit more time thinking about from a DFS perspective, thinking about if the Rockets game stayed close and
Mm-hmm.
how that would pan out in the DFS streets because I believe we saw a few pieces from that game have big nights. Kevin Porter Jr., a guy that can get buckets and is going to be a key piece to that offense, moving forward. Obviously, Christian Wood too, and then yeah, the Lakers are going to struggle without LeBron. Anthony, like LeBron does so much that this office, they're just struggling without him. They're struggling on the defensive end of the court. They're struggling on the offensive end of the court, and a team that everyone thinks is in tank mode, which they are kind of in tank mode. Um, yeah, they got the best of the Lakers. So very worried about the Lakers without LeBron. Hopefully they get him back, and I think they'll be fine if that happens.
Yeah, of course, that is the key to that team, and it just shows you how good he really is there, and how smart Anthony Davis was to attach himself to him because you see him, trying to be the number one guy there yesterday, and they couldn't even get past Oklahoma City. So we will see how that turns out, and we'll monitor it as the season continues. But obviously, that's a really popular storyline among the fans in the media. The first game we'll talk about tonight is the San Antonio Spurs. They hit the road to head to Orlando to take on the Magic. The total here is 214. AP, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, hold on. I was just had something pop up. All right, so the Spurs game. Yeah, so I mean, I'm still adjusting, getting used to these low totals. I would typically look at that and be like, dang, that's a low total. But look at the board tonight. We got the Nets Pistons 211. There's so many totals that are just very, very low. Cleveland Raptors, which obviously we'll get to, but 205. So again, actually, spread off the top of your head, I meant to look this stat up, but do you know, and it's okay if you don't, but do you know what percentage of bets have gone under versus over on the season, like just looking at every game?
I don't know the exact number, but if I were to estimate from reading it, like a couple weeks ago, I think the unders were sitting at about 57%, and it was
That's
even
just crazy.
higher, but we saw a huge drop, right? So they leveled out a bit this week. Last week, it would have been a lot higher. If you had asked me that last Friday, it would have been in the 60s. So they evened out a bit this week, but we saw these numbers drop, right? Because last week, when you're on, we were talking about a bunch of 217s and 218s. We see a bunch of 210s and 211s today. So it seems like they made the proper adjustment.
Yeah, the Magic seem like so. I like DeJounte Murray. I think he's having an awesome year.
Hmm.
They don't have Pirtle in the paint. I think this game could be pretty close. It's a stay away for me, betting purposes. we've seen Magic, on the heels of Cole Anthony have these big games and keep them in it. I'm not like a Cole Anthony truther or anything, and I think in DFS he's way overpriced. I'm definitely not paying 7.7 for him. If he kills me, he kills me, as we often say. But I do think there are some interesting pieces in this game in DFS. I think DeJounte Murray, 9-1. No one's going to pay that. And if the game stays close, he could do his thing. Like he could definitely have, a big game tonight. I'm fading Cole Anthony, but you could make a case for Wendell Carter. He's relatively cheap. I just don't necessarily trust the Magic. Terence Ross is a guy I would typically like off the bench, but we haven't seen him take double-digit shots in like 4 or 5 games. So I'm kind of off of him. And then, with Pirtle out, Eubanks is going to slide into that center spot, and I think he's a fine punt value type play. Or you could go to a guy like Devin Vassell, who's getting about 28 minutes off the bench, and he's having a really good start to the season.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So obviously when the Pirtle news hit, I think that was Wednesday, right? Everyone threw Eubanks and Thad Young in, and that was a pretty easy play to make, right? As Eubanks was, I think, 3K, and I think Thad Young was 3.9 or 4.1, right around there, right? It's really easy to move him in there. I've seen the necessary adjustment here. I was wondering how much that keeps you off with Eubanks here now at 4,200 and Thad Young at 5,300. You still think they present value?
That price there is definitely appropriate. And they're not as much like Eubanks. We want to be like a 3K guy. But like, here's the thing: we got Ivica Zubac, I believe, who's like he's 4K. So he's 200 cheaper than Eubanks, and he played like 30 minutes against Towns. They need the size against the Wolves. So for me, I'm going to have way more shares of a guy like Zubac over Eubanks. But, if you want to get different, Eubanks, you need him to be incredibly efficient, I think. But, for a center, he has decent usage. The block upside is okay. It seems like Pop likes him, but he never gives him like a ton of minutes. So if you land on him, it's fine. I think Zubac's a better play, though.
All right. And as far as the side goes, I know it's square, but I do like the Spurs here. I mean, they absolutely blew them out on opening night. And when you're looking at the matchup and going back to that game, I think the Magic are going to – I want to take them against older teams, right? That they can be more athletic than, that they can kind of out-energy, especially early, right? I want to take them against like Brooklyn's, right? Teams that are going to overlook them. They're going to be catching 10. Those are the situations that I want to bet the Orlando Magic on this really short spread against another team now, right? With DeRozan being out of there, right? They've pretty much gone, no more Aldridge. This is a young team. I think they're going to get up and down the floor with the Magic, and I don't think they're going to just be thrown off by, playing a bunch of young cats that can just run all day. So I do like the San Antonio Spurs here, and when I pulled that up, I kind of thought the same thing. I said, okay, well, I think that little Eubanks, free square, whatever you want to call it, is gone. I think that price was appropriate. And I did like Thad Young, too. Even though he didn't show out really that much in that last game, I still thought he was an appropriate option. But at 5,300, he is off my radar as well. The Brooklyn Nets -10 heading to Detroit Pistons +10. Kind of the situation I was talking about here. You get a young athletic team that's really going to go against an older team that I don't know is going to want to do so much. Of course, we've talked about James Harden's struggles. Seem to be getting it back kind of bad the most recent game, but I still think he's trending upward. Of course, Kevin Durant will always do well. I lean towards the Pistons here, but I don't want to get involved because I do think the Nets could just blow them out, even with everything going on. So, talk to me about the side here if you lean towards the Nets or the Pistons. And then, of course, I don't think that we can skip this segment without bringing up Kade Cunningham, his play, and his potential tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say, if for the Pistons to cover tonight, I think Kade needs to make some shots. I was trying to pull it up. He crushed in DFS formats yesterday, but still, the shooting was not good at all. 4 for 17.
4 for 17.
But this guy, if I am Dwayne Casey, I would tell him just to keep going, keep firing, keep shooting the ball. You got a 6'8" guard who was just incredible in college. So yeah, eventually he's going to get going, and could be tonight. I believe he's off of any type of restriction, so he's good to go. He's 4-6 on DraftKings. I was just running, so I'm probably running like 100 to 150 in that $15 tonight. We've been playing around with a few optimizers out there in the industry, and I'm gonna have like probably 85 to 90% Cade in my lineups. I'm gonna be that overweight just because I feel like people are under on this guy, and mainly because of the first two games. We saw those two duds. Even yesterday in higher stake stuff, he was only 55% owned, which I feel was a massive mistake. If he had any type of efficiency yesterday, he's putting up almost 50 DK points. Mm-hmm. So I literally have his projection tonight, like at 37 points. So he's going to, at 4-6, he's going to hit an insane amount of my builds, because I think he has that upside. I do think they could throw Who do you think they throw on him? It has to be like Bruce Brown or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Harris might even get some work on him.
I think against like a smaller Nets team, I don't know. I think, they didn't have him the last time they played. It was a back-to-back. They were resting Cade. I could see them covering here. Like the Nets like James Harden, I can't figure it out. So I played him against Atlanta. In the first half, he had taken like 3 shots. It was incredible. The dude was just not shooting the ball. He's done a fine job running the offense. 12 assists against Detroit, 11 assists against Atlanta. He's just like not shooting the ball well. Maybe he knows he's just struggling with his shot, so he's trying to be that distributor. But eventually he's going to get going. At 10-3, I think he's another really good tournament play tonight, just because of that peripheral upside he has. He has triple-double upside, something that Durant doesn't really have, because Durant, we want those raw points from him, because it's kind of rare for us to see a triple-double out of him, even though I think he does have one on the season. But I think James might have been out of the game. I'm not entirely sure, but betting wise, I'm off of this game. If I had to take a lean, Pistons 10.5. If assuming Cade can kind of get right, but I don't feel good about it at all.
All right, yeah, I'm with you there on the Pistons. One more DK question, and then move on to the next game. A guy that we rarely talk about this year that I thought was pretty good in the lineups last year was Jeremy Grant. He's sitting here at 7,400. I don't really hear you guys talking about on the shows, and when I'm checking my lineups, I don't see a lot of people running him back against me either. What do you think of Jeremy Grant? Is that just a case where he's appropriately priced, so everybody's staying awake with all the value that's present?
Yeah, part of it is also the Dwayne Casey effect. You never know kind of what you're going to get out of these rotations. We've seen, they come in with like guys like Josh Jackson. He's gotten minutes. Trey Lyles has also gotten minutes. If Grant is cold, but we saw him, 11 for 22 against Philly, but he was terrible, 5 for 15 in the same matchup against the Nets. The one guy, like, I just think they want to get running, and we saw it, yesterday, 32 minutes, is Cade. So I would rather play him. I think there are better options in the 7K range at the power forward position on DraftKings later on in the slate. So Grant is not a guy that I'm going to be playing too often in this matchup.
Yeah, I wonder if they drop his price or if they're just fine with him being 5% owned all year. So I always talk to Hoop, and we joke about the mystery of how DraftKings sets these prices. The Memphis Grizzlies head to Washington to take on the Wizards. Memphis Grizzlies now +2. Washington, a very public. Now they're the home favorite. I think this opened at a pick here. So I'm big on Washington this year. I love Washington this year, but I'm actually against the steam and against the market here, because I've talked to other cappers this morning that like Washington as well. And normally I would. I just think this is a case where I think that Memphis is just such the better team. And one of the things that I'm looking at here is strength of schedule so far. Memphis has been beating good teams, right? Let's look at Memphis. They are, I think, 6-3 now. And they have wins over the Clippers, Cleveland, which actually looks better now, Golden State, Denver, right? I mean, they're beating good teams. Washington's got some good wins too. A couple over Boston. They beat Atlanta and Indiana and Toronto early in the year. But I'm not necessarily as impressed with what they've done. I still think they're still coming together as a team. I like Memphis here, but I'm definitely going against the grain. What do you think of the pick?
I'm with you. I like Memphis. The Wizards, 2 losses in a row, kind of that taste of defeat is now in their mouth and they started 5-1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now 2 losses, kind of, doubt starts to creep in your mind. And we got a Grizzlies team that just, they're hungry, coming off back-to-back wins over the Nuggets. I mean, that's just massive. They carry in so much momentum. I'm with you. Out of all the games that we've had so far, is the line, are they getting 2 points right now? Or
yeah, it's +2, money line +106 on Bookmaker right now.
Yeah, I love the +2. I think Ja Morant is, he's trying to put his name in that MVP category. This guy's, he's been a machine. And you got Desmond Bane, who's playing really well. D'Anthony Melton is a guy. I love that he's starting now. He hasn't been as great, I guess, fantasy-wise over the last 2 or 3 games, 2 games. But to start the season, this guy has been fantastic, and he's having a good, a great season so far. I think it's really interesting what they've done kind of with Kyle Anderson, having him come off the bench, being just another guy with a little bit of size that can create a spark as far as scoring goes. So I think that's an interesting move that they've made to that rotation. Last year, we saw D'Anthony Melton come off the bench. We saw Desmond Bane. He didn't really have a big role at all. What do you think about Jaren Jackson? Do you think he's – let me pull up my Heat chart right now. Okay, I got him tagged as a core play. I haven't really been high on him at all this season, but in DFS – when a guy like this finally has that breakout game, which we saw against Denver, and where people are still a little bit hesitant to get on, I like to just go in and get a ton of shares of this guy. And Jaren Jackson is really fitting that mold for me right now at 5.6 on DraftKings. I've really pumped up his projection on DK for me so that he'll hit a bunch of my lineups. I think the matchup's great. I think, these bigs against the Wizards just can absolutely smash. And I'm not really a Steven Adams guy. So I think this is another game where Jaren Jackson can come out as long as he stays out of foul trouble. I would not be surprised if this guy went from putting up 42 against the Nuggets to putting up 46 DK points tonight in this really nice matchup against the Wizards. What do you think about that call on Jaren Jackson?
I'm with you. I completely agree. And I was going to say, this is the spot that I think when you're looking at props and when you're looking at daily fantasy, let's grab a guy that's number 4, drafted number 4 overall, right? He's an elite athlete compared to NBA players, right? So that makes him, really, really good athletically out there on the floor. And then he's coming off this big game, getting that confidence, making that shot. And then if you I like to make fun of going about this with the press conferences, but I loved his quotes afterwards where he wasn't celebrating, right? You didn't see the Derrick Rose pose. You didn't see the Damian Lillard, more of the Barry Sanders, hand the ball to the ref, act like you've been there before, and let's keep going. I love to see that from him. And if, in that 2018 draft, there was talks that he was the most athletically gifted player out of all those guys. Ayton, Luka, Trae Young, Marvin Bagley, all the guys that went at the top there. I think he's got great potential here, and I'm with you.
Who's going to guard him on the Wizards side? It doesn't even matter. Kuzma,
yeah. That's what I was going to think. They're going to put Kuzma and Gafford on there. Kuzma's too small, Gafford's too slow. So
yeah, and right? Trez has been getting a ton of run, and
Trez will be a good matchup. But I think you can get Trez in foul trouble. I'm worried they might get each other in foul trouble, actually. I think that's the only way this play doesn't go good tonight, is he gets 3 with 8 minutes to go in the second quarter, right? So
I think Jenkins will be smart with that rotation, though. With Trez, he could run it to where when Trez checks in, he could just pull Jackson out just a little bit, throw Kyle Anderson in there or something, and make it kind of an awkward, from a matchup perspective, then get him back in and still get him 31, 32 minutes, which is all he needs at 5.6. So he's kind of one of my flag plant plays right now. In the games we've discussed, I got Cade and Jackson as 2 kind of potential core plays to build around on the slate.
Yeah, and if you talk about guys that were hurt by the rule changes like Harden and Trae Young, you'd have to put Jaren Jackson in the category of guys that were helped because he's not getting as many ticky-tack fouls. So I think it's easier for him to stay out of foul trouble. So like him even more on the props market and as a DFS play. Let's talk about a game. This game's interesting. So I wonder if you have a new injury report because the line move made me worry about Jrue Holiday here. This was 5.5 last night. It's down to 3.5, so probably the biggest overnight move that we had. And I'm talking about the New York Knicks heading to Milwaukee to take on the Bucks. Total 217. So I was a little worried when that line dropped that Holiday wasn't going to play because my idea was it was sitting at 5 because Holiday was back, and I still gave the Bucks an edge there. What are you hearing about Jrue Holiday? How are you approaching this game, and what do you think of this game at the new line of -3.5?
Yeah, I still show that he is probable to play, so I would be working under the assumption that he's going to play. Let me pull this tweet up. I can't find the actual tweet, but no, I show he's still probable. So that's going to be a big help to the Bucks. I mean, they are definitely missing. I mean, what do you think they're missing more? Probably Jrue Holiday over Chris Middleton, right? Because as Drew's been out, we have seen Middleton in these games. They were still struggling when it was just Middleton and Giannis. So, like, I really think Jrue, if he is back, he's going to have a really big impact for this Bucks team.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think it also depends on the matchup because I think Middleton is a little bit underrated defensively. So against a bigger team like the Nets, right, I think you need Middleton a little more. Tonight, where I think that it won't happen till the end, but, you can move Giannis onto Randle there. I think I'd rather have Jrue to shut down those guards because most likely you're going to get Kemba or Derrick Rose, whoever's hot, right? And that's going to be an issue. Of course, Fournier can put it in out there. So if you have him to stop whoever's hot, I think that helps a little more this evening. I think that who do they miss more is a little more matchup dependent. I think tonight, you're right, Jrue. I think certain ones might be a little bit of Middleton. Middleton out till the 14th, so it'll be another 9 days till he gets back. A little worried. Giannis was talking of knee soreness, but boy, that guy played through an amazing injury last year. So I like the Bucks here. Talk to me about the pick here and who you're targeting in DFS.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, the
11-8 for Giannis.
It's what?
Giannis 11-8.
I think he's fine. I do think this could be a tougher. You'd think this would be a tougher matchup for him, but man, this guy. I mean, it was just the Pistons, but I mean, it was basically Giannis and his brother against the Pistons, and they just owned that team, which was good to see. So I mean, you got to think the Knicks with Mitch Robinson in there, Julius Randle, they got a lot more size. It would be an issue for Giannis and the Bucks, but. Even at 11-8, I think there is plenty of value on this slate to where Giannis, I think, is a safe bet for like 55 plus DK points. So, in that range, I think like a guy that I'm looking at, we'll talk about later, is Paul George, who's just been phenomenal. But I have no problem with Giannis. His brother, Giannis, he's 3-4. A little bit tougher of a value play. You got to think, this matchup's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of defense played. On the total here, I would lean under, but my rule of thumb back in the day was I'm not betting under on Bucks games because we know that they want to play with pace. Obviously, with the rule changes, though, and when you look at these two teams, how they match up, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see more of a defensive battle here. The other benefit that the Bucks have is Bobby Portis is back. His usage is insane off the bench. I mean, he's only playing around 22 to 24 minutes. That's kind of where I have him projected. His usage is insane. Despite like playing limited minutes, he's taking double-digit shot attempts in matchups against the Pistons and the Jazz. So he's an interesting guy in this game. But for DFS-wise, I think Jrue is also interesting at 6'5", assuming he doesn't have any crazy minutes restriction. So DFS wise, it's Jrue Holiday, it's Giannis for me. Maybe Bobby Portis will make a few of my teams, but again at 4-7, I do think there are better values in that range on the slate. On the other side, Julius Randle at 9'6". I do think it's a tough matchup here, but I do think he could get going. I mean, this guy's been an absolute beast. The backcourt is way tougher to attack. You got Kemba, you got Derrick Rose. Quickly has gotten in there at times. Alex Burke has gotten in there. The rotation is just really tough to pay kind of almost a premium now. Kemba at 5'9" seems to be appropriately priced. So I'm going to be very light on the backcourt. I'll have a little bit of Julius Randle, and that's kind of how I'm attacking this game.
All right, sounds like a good plan there. The Cleveland Cavaliers head to Toronto to take on the Raptors. Cavaliers, a team I like to back so far this season, and they've done me quite well here. Missing Lauri Markkanen, but I don't think they missed a beat. They played one game without him, and they were still able to get it done. Of course, Isaac Okoro is out in this game. No Kevin Love either. He hasn't been seeing that many minutes on the Toronto side. Siakam's still out. Watanabe is out, and Scotty Barnes is in. He's back tonight, which I think takes away some of the value there on the Raptors side. I'm not going to get involved in this game. I do lean towards taking the points with the Cavaliers, but this Raptors team, I do project them to be really good as well. And with Barnes back, I think this number's about fair. What do you think? Am I missing some value on either side here?
I mean, gosh, this total is just 205 in an NBA game, but yeah. I can see it, man. Both these teams kind of playing that half-court game. Jared Allen's been an absolute beast. We've seen bigs put up some nice numbers against this Raptors team, so I think Jared Allen is definitely in play. Evan Mobley, a tournament option if you're not playing Allen. I mean, Allen's kind of taking some usage away, but Evan Mobley, he's going to sneak in. He's going to have the occasional big game from time to time. I think the pieces you stay away from on the Cleveland side, as they are still going to be without Markkanen, Okoro, and Love, I want to stay away from the Dean Wade types, the Dylan Windler, the Chetty Osman. I think that rotation between those three is going to be somewhat risky. I don't, and I agree with the coach here. I don't want to give those three kind of scrub type players too many minutes. I think they're better off getting these bigs in there and then rotating in Ricky Rubio. He's been very impressive. I think he's a really interesting tournament play tonight at 5'3". This guy has 30-plus minute upside. His usage and how he runs this offense is really nice. I think it's a really good piece for the Cavs, and it's going to make them competitive having a stronger second unit compared to teams that they've had in the recent past. The other thing too is if you play on Super Draft, that's a site that we've been partners with for a little while now. Ricky Rubio, I think the bump, let me pull it up real quick. You're getting 1.55x whatever fantasy points that he gets. So let's just say he gets 100, to make it easy, 100 fantasy points. Obviously, he's not going to. In Super Draft formats, he would get 155. So I think he's a really interesting play here with 30-minute upside in this rotation. So I have some moderate interest in him. And then on the Raptors side, it's tough. OG is up to 8K with Scotty Barnes back. I'm not paying that for him. I think Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent are fine tournament plays. I'm going to be staying away from the front court here.
Yeah, Gary Trent's been getting it done so far this season. Finally moved him up a little. He was one of the ones I was joking about with Hoop, where they move him real quick, and Gary Trent just seemed to be putting up big numbers and was saying still between that 4,500 to 5,000 range. Where do they move him here today at? He's at 5,500, so a little more appropriate. And I love the point that you made about Ricky Rubio. That is a move that happened in the offseason that I kind of just, okay, whatever, good to know. And watching it, I said, boy, I underestimated how much he means to this team. This is a young team, and they could, because their bench isn't very good, they could just get destroyed in those minutes when Garland and Sexton aren't on the floor. Also, Garland and Sexton don't know how to play with the lead. They'll chuck too early in the shot clock. They won't get their teammates involved, and I think that he provides a steadying presence there in the second minutes, and they're also kind of not necessarily deferring to him, but you can tell they give him respect. They don't necessarily like freeze him out or try and ball hog when he's on the floor. I think Rubio is a great addition to this team. And I think he's a big reason why they're winning and covering a lot of spread so far this season. The Los Angeles Clippers are -2.5 in Minnesota to take on the Timberwolves. Now, they just ran this game on Wednesday. I was on the Clippers there, and they turned out for us. And that was another one where I kind of went against the grain because the market did like the T-Wolves a lot. I like the Clippers again, but sometimes on these back-to-backs, I'm worried about going to the well. Like, hey, I'm 1-0 in this little matchup. Maybe I should just stay away. Who do you like in this game, and am I missing value by staying off?
Yeah. Again, the Clippers, I was trying to think. Do you know if this game went over the last time they played? I can't
remember. It was 126 to 115 on a total of 212.
Yeah, so I mean, I like if Reggie Jackson's going to push the pace like he did last time, I would have some interest there. Also, the ball's in Anthony Edwards' hands more often. I think there is some value here again in the over. This Clipper teams they can play at such a slow pace at times. It would make me a little bit worried. But if we could get Eric Bledsoe out of this rotation, if we could get more Terrence Mann, more Luke Kennard, it would be much more friendly for the overs here. But I think this is going to be an awesome game to attack in DFS formats. Again, let me pull up my heat chart. So Reggie Jackson, I think, is going to be a fine play. I think Paul George, like I said earlier, is definitely a core play that you can build around. This guy has been an absolute machine. He always seems to be under-owned relative to where he should be. And just look at this. I mean, 54, 62, 60. He had a couple duds, putting up a 33 and a 39. But then he had a 66 and a 58. I mean, this guy is crushing. I mean, and then just like his usage too. It isn't just like his raw scoring. I mean, he's getting assists, he's getting rebounds, he's getting steals and blocks. It's basically all of the above. He's definitely one of the premier spend-ups on this slate and on any slate that he is on right now with Kawhi Leonard out of this lineup. So ton of interest in Paul George. Zubac, again, I don't know what they did with his price. 4K. I think he even got into like foul trouble a little earlier, or maybe that was Hartenstein. I can't recall. But look, they're going to want a big on the floor. Hartenstein played 13 minutes. Zubac played 34 minutes. Yeah. So with Towns out there, with Naz Reid's a big guy, and they got lots of the Wolves have so many big guys. They're going to want a big out there. Zubac at 4K is one of the best values on the slate. I would say him and Kade Cunningham are probably two of the best core value plays that you could make. And then on the other side too, Patrick Beverly, 4K. Now again, I always get worried about Pat Bev. I mean, the peripheral stats, I mean, they were incredible. 10 rebounds, 8 assists, a block. He doesn't shoot the ball much though. So that is the one concern there, but he is only 4K. The other concern with him is this dude loves to foul people, loves to get teed up, and I'm sure he's one of the highest ejected players last season if we go back and look.
Any interest in Malik Beasley at 4,400?
Yeah, so Malik Beasley is going to be another core tournament play of mine. So he was 4-1 when these teams just played. I was very high on him. He had the worst possible start that you could have. He was 0 for 6, I think, with his first 6 shots. He had no rebounds, no assists. Luckily, he got it going. But let me pull up the rotation and what we saw. So I think late they pulled him. I don't know if it was cold shooting. I can't remember, but he didn't check back in until fairly late. I think there's 4 or 5 minutes left in that game, but I think he has. If his shot's on, they just let him play. Who's the Wolves coach?
Chris Finch.
They'll just let him play, and this is a guy that can get hot. A guy who has big upside. I mean, I don't want to throw out some. I personally think he has 35 plus point upside, DK point upside here. Again, it's not likely that we see that, but I think he's a very strong play off the bench.
All right. Yeah, that was the guy that I'd circled, and I always say that I like to fill these out before you come on and see which ones I get right and which one you guys tell me, no, you're looking at that game all wrong.
All right, spread. The other reason I like it, he comes off the bench. So we get this question in Discord all the time, and I know everyone's not looking at NBA all the time, so I'm not gonna get after you, but someone will see the starting lineup, and we'll get the alert. I'll see it on my phone, and it'll say, "Can we still play Malik Beasley since he's not starting?" And I always chuckle. I'm like, "Well, he never starts. He always comes off the bench." He's been better as a six man off the bench. So that always lowers his ownership, though, and I think we'll see that tonight. I don't think he's going to be too popular of a value play.
The other upside is you're playing against other bench players, right? Which makes it a little easier to score. Although the Clippers do have a good defense there, so maybe it drops off a little bit when they go to the bench. I'll actually have to keep an eye on that tonight. I'm not as up on my rotation. It's so funny at the beginning of the year, I'm just trying to pack all this tape study into all these teams. Finally getting to the point where I can run a model again because we're past 8 games. But still definitely need to work on my rotational knowledge there and see who gets those plush matchups against the second units. The New Orleans Pelicans are +9 heading to Golden State to take on the Warriors. I think the Pelicans are absolutely terrible. I think this line is 2 points too high. I think it should be 7, even as bad as the Pelicans are. But I'm not going to jump in there because the Pelicans are terrible. So right now I'm off it. What do you think of this game, AP?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this. I mean, the Warriors. Like, how about this team? So, they got what? They got one loss on the year, and that's to the Grizzlies. And we like the Grizzlies tonight. I mean, the Grizzlies have some nice wins. They just destroyed the Hornets, and they did it without Curry having a big night. I mean, he was kind of a ghost there in the first half, and it was just because Jordan Poole was incredible. This dude. I think this was a game. I had something. I had something going on with my kids, so I had NBA radio on, and I just kept hearing, Jordan Poole, pulls up, drains a three, just back to back to back. I mean, that guy was having an incredible night. Took 16 3-point shots and made a ton of them. So this team has a ton of firepower. Zero chance I'm playing, or I would take the Pelicans here, the Pelicans side. And I don't like taking big spreads. Like I don't like it's just such a sweat, and it never feels good because any of these teams have so much talent. Any of them can come back. So probably a stay away from me. Maybe a lean towards the over here, since we know the Warriors are going to push the pace. Since we know Steph Curry is due to get going. And it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Chef came back and had a monster night and did so at low ownership. He's going to be virtually unowned on DraftKings. He's 11-4. That price tag is just a tad bit too high for him. But the peripheral stats are there. I mean, 8 rebounds, 9 assists last game. We've seen him almost. I think he has 1 triple-double against the Lakers on the season. So he makes for interesting tournament play. And then the Pelicans side, we're still waiting on Brandon Ingram, right? I think he's
still questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if they held him out, however.
Yeah, it's just, do you think the spread moves much if he's out?
No, I think the number already says that he's out. I think it goes down to that 7 that my model's popping if he plays. And I think that's where I'm getting that little discrepancy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, it's stay away. All right, so Joe Val, he's been having a monster year. I want to really like him tonight. My worry is, how do you think he would pan out if the Warriors just, they love to run these small ball lineups. Do you think that's a risk to Joe Val from a matchup perspective? And then it's like, who else do they throw in there, though? He's been so dominant down there in the paint.
Yeah, I think he actually is a pretty good matchup. And I think he's one of those guys that gets there even if they get blown out. Because if they get blown out, he's the one that I can count on, right? He has their highest field goal percentage of the year. He's by far the most efficient player from an offensive perspective. So my guess is if they don't cover the spread, it's because the rest of those guys, Devontae Graham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right? They're not doing anything for us, and that's how they're not getting there. So I think actually he's a pretty safe play here. He should be by far the biggest player on the court, right? Like who are they going to counter him with on the Warriors side?
Yeah, I I do not know. I mean, I think I think what the Warriors do is kind of like what they did against the Lakers. I think they run up and down the court as fast as they can and play with pace and make it tougher on, basically outscore them, making it really tough on Joval, from a defensive end of the court.
All right, and then let me run my value play from this game by you. Gary Payton II. I don't know how he's not a junior. It says Gary Payton II here on DraftKings, though. Had a great game against Charlotte. I think he was another reason that Steph didn't go off is they got this young cat, and I think Steph's not a selfish guy, right? He sees this young cat cooking. He'd rather have that happen. He knows they're going to get the W, so they went ahead and fed him. And then Kerr had nothing but great things to say about him. And then the one, of course, that caught my eye that hopefully he's just telling the truth, but he says we got to get this kid more minutes, which made me want to put him in there at 3,100. Do you think I'm reaching here?
I think that's a bit of a reach there, spread.
Okay.
I personally would not chase that play, but if you got a read on a rotation, I mean, we saw him play 17 minutes against the Kings, and then he played 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes against the Thunder in the very next game. Kerr isn't really a guy I don't think we can trust. The only guys I trust in this rotation are Curry, Poole, Draymond. I don't necessarily even trust like Wiggins that much. I mean, his minutes are all over the map. I mean, 25, we've seen 37, we've seen 24, 28. So no, I couldn't get there just because I do think we have better values too on this slate. Like if you're looking for a cheap guard, I mean, Simons, I think Davion Mitchell are two guys with a little bit more of a secure rotation and role on their teams.
Well, as you speak of Davion Mitchell, let's just move straight to that game. The Kings are -2. My bookmaker just logged me out, so I don't have the total right in front of me, but I will pull it right back up. Kings are -2. I like the Kings here. I think this is kind of a fatigue fade, right? Did Charlotte look kind of tired in that game against the Warriors? That wasn't the best version of the Charlotte team. Also, LaMelo took a bit of a spill there towards the end of the game. Wondering if he's 100%, and even if he is, Borrego's been closing with Ish Smith as well, which I guess, I don't know if that's an indictment on LaMelo's defense or what, but it's just kind of a weird decision to me. Pretty high hopes for this team so far, but not surprised they're getting off to a slow start. As last year, I think their win total was like 22 or 23. So now they are faced with the burden of expectations, and I do think that for a young team, that's one of the first things they need to learn to handle. Kings at home here have been playing well lately, and they've been playing well with De'Aaron Fox playing absolutely terrible. If he finally breaks out and gets even close to the way that he finished the season, this team's got a great chance for the play-in or maybe one of that 7 or 8 seed here. So I like the Kings here laying 2. Market agrees because this was 1.5 earlier today. What do you think?
I mean, I was going to throw a question back at you about De'Aaron Fox. I mean, DraftKings is starting to tempt us, but honestly, I'm not tempted because of what I've seen. And I don't know if it's just because of how this guard rotation they have with Halliburton, Davion Mitchell, and then, even Buddy Hield. It just maybe Fox isn't that same player. Maybe this team is better when they're all playing, when they're all getting minutes, when they're all getting usage. I don't necessarily know. I mean, I like to watch the Kings. They're a team that usually plays with a lot of pace. I think from a fantasy perspective, 231 total here, high pace game, assuming LaMelo does play. I think he does play. It at least I think the number here, if he wasn't playing, I think we'd see a lower number here as far as the total goes. But yeah, I think this is a really interesting game from fantasy perspective. Miles Bridges. So I was making fun of our boy Didi Pensack in chat for this guy, but I got to give him props. I mean, Miles Bridges is having an incredible year. He's always priced in this range that he's not hitting a number that is attractive for the projection guys out there. And so what you have to do if you want to get exposure to him is, hand build or raise his projection. We've seen 57, 45, 43, 38, 41, 45, 53, 46 to start the season. I mean, he's been incredibly consistent. He's taken a ton of shots. The numbers, if you took away his name, picture, everything, it almost he looked like the stats here look really similar to a Julius Randle. So he seems like he's trying to become kind of that Randle type of player. And if that's the case, 8,200 is a fine price tag here. The matchup is not bad, so I'm going to have a little bit of exposure. I guess Harrison Barnes is a guy that would match up to him pretty decently, but I think he's an interesting play. I think the Kings, I got to defer to you. I don't like Fox's price is getting better, but I don't like it. I think Halliburton's interesting. I like Halliburton on fantasy draft. I think Davion Mitchell is a fine value. This guy, very good defender, taking double-digit shots, back-to-back 20-plus fantasy point outings, and he's actually been somewhat consistent on the season. So for me, it's Davion Mitchell. It's Miles Bridges. I want a little bit more news on LaMelo. If he plays, I think he's a really fine tournament play. But I think this game is going to be good for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, just on Fox, he's always been a streaky player. And I think it's just he's had a bad streak at the beginning of the season, so I think more is being made of it than it really is. He'd always kind of go into these little funks, and then he'll go through spurts where he looks like, one of the best point guards in the league. So I don't necessarily think he's downgraded or anything's wrong with him. Seems like he's still beating his men pretty easily. The shot's just not falling for him. Eventually it will, but it's just tough to bet on. Is it the night that's going to happen? I do think the Kings are deep here, which is why I don't think that you guys talk about them a lot, on the other shows, because, kind of like the Spurs, kind of like the Jazz, when they're all healthy, the usage gets distributed so evenly. I think it's tough for these guys to find their way into the lineup.
Here's a case that can be made, okay? Let's look at who the Kings have played. Pelicans, the Jazz, Mavericks, Pelicans, the Suns, Warriors, the Jazz again. And then, they started off the season playing Portland, a team that plays with pace, doesn't play a lot of defense, which is what we should get tonight. His best fantasy day was against Portland. He put up 46 DraftKings points. So I think if you look at it, just that he's had a lot of bad matchups. And then if you look at this matchup, it's going to be one if LaMelo plays that I think is far better for him, where both teams are kind of getting up and down the court. It might be a time to get back on De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I think he's going to break the slate one day. It's just hard to guess which day he will finally break out. But I know, because JSU hates I do this, I listen to all the local radio, and it's one of the biggest topics, and I think they're overblowing it. I think he's going to be fine. It's just a bad stretch. He's had him before. It's just being kind of amplified because it's happening at the very beginning of the season. But the team's still playing well there without him. Once he gets back to his normal self, I think this team could be an actual playoff contender, which is something we haven't thought for a while with the Sacramento Kings. The last game on the card, the Indiana Pacers +5 against the Portland Trailblazers, who've been off to a terrible start. These are two teams that I don't want to back, so I didn't get involved. I guess I'd lean towards taking the points. Indiana had that nice win over the Knicks. I was on the wrong side of that one. So maybe they are starting to come together, getting a little more healthy. I think this will be the second time we have Brogdon and LeVert in the lineup. So from a gambling perspective, I think this makes them more attractive. From a DFS perspective, obviously less attractive. What do you think of this game?
Yeah, so speaking of guys that need to break out, one of my other flag plants just the guy took 27 shots last game. He's taken 20 plus his last 4 or 5 games. He's going to get it going. Dame Lillard, 9-9. The price tag is still up in a range where people are not going to play him. And rightfully so. He just hasn't produced at this number. But this Pacers defense hasn't been that great. We've seen teams put up big fantasy numbers against them. I'm going to have some interest here in Dame tonight. I also have some interest in CJ McCollum. I'm not going to play him in the same lineup. I just think usually we see one or the other go off. And then, Nurkic, he's just, he hasn't played 30 minutes all season. We have better center options out there. Not going to play him. They're tempting us to play Bobby Covington, but he just doesn't. He has no usage at all. This dude just doesn't shoot the ball. He's out there for defense. He used to at least shoot threes back in the day, but we are not seeing that at all. I think Norman Powell's interesting at 4-7. So I think this is going to be another game that's really interesting for fantasy purposes. I think Sabonis is another guy who no one's going to play. but has big upside, and it's a really good matchup. He's coming off a really tough game, tough matchup against the Knicks. If you take that game away, though, his numbers are phenomenal. 52 against the Spurs, 49 against the Raptors. He has a couple other 50-plus point games on the season. You got to think that playing Sabonis here and running it on the other side with Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum is going to be a really nice way to get exposure to this game. That's going to be one of my main tournament routes that I take tonight.
Yeah, Nurkic is
Simons too is a guy of interest in. So if you're looking for kind of a under 4K guard type play, his role is really nice off the bench. They're getting this guy anywhere from 22 to 28 minutes, and I like that. He's a good basketball player, a guy that streaky shooter, but when he gets going, the guy can make a ton of shots. So Simons is a guy that I don't think many people are going to play. I think he's a really interesting tournament value play tonight.
Yeah, Simons is a guy that they stuck with for a while, and he kept doing these terrible minutes, right? And I was reading the beat writers about him, and it was like, why does he keep getting minutes? And this was last year under Terry Stotts, and they're like, supposedly in practice, he's like up there with Dame and CJ as one of the best players on the floor, and he couldn't necessarily translate to the game. Seems like it's finally coming together for him. So that's something for them to be happy about in Portland. Now, you talked about Nurkic. I think there's an issue here where I think he's starting to slow down a little bit. And I think he was good defensively, right? And now Billups is trying, he came in and the whole idea was like, we know this team can score. We need to be able to play defense if we're really going to make that next step. And I don't know if Nurkic is able to do it. Then you end up getting Covington a lot against, some of the bigger guys. And a lot of times they're willing to stay out there with him. So he's not a guy that's going to shoot if he's covered. And they're just not leaving him alone right now, which is why I think that a couple of those things are happening there. With the Portland. I'm surprised Nurkic is still 7-3. I guess he does have that upside, but he hasn't given you returns very much yet. On the Pacers side, with those guys back, right? Some of our good favorites, Duarte, McConnell, they're kind of out of the rotation, right?
Yeah. I think Duarte is going to be a key guy in the rotation, but yeah, 5'6" is too much there. And the other thing too is Brogdon I believe he was downgraded to questionable too. So if he was ruled out, it would bump up Karis LeVert for me. It would give Sabonis a little bump. The other thing too that I guess is a little worrisome is if Miles Turner gets going early, we see them just feed him. Like this dude has been hitting threes. He's up there for big guys and 3-point makes on the season. So. And you just talk about it. If Covington is the one that has to switch out onto him, I still think he's going to have some decent looks. But obviously, Covington's a good defender, knows how to switch and cover these bigs that can shoot from the perimeter.
All right. I was going to say, Miles Turner coming off a 57-point game. How do you like to approach that? Do you think that his ownership will be higher, or do people think that that's a one-off and they just stay away? Like, is it like buying high? When you get in a guy on Turner, coming out 57 points, he's only 6K.
Yeah, I mean the problem is we have Jared Allen 6'6", Zubac 4K. We got Towns on the slate. There's a lot of Steven Adams is 4'7". We got a lot of center plays on the slate. Joe Val's in discussion too. So I think what you'll see is high ownership on a guy like Zubac. And then maybe Jared Allen being up there as well. And then I think you'll see ownership kind of spread out among these other plays.
All right. Well, that is the slate for tonight. AP, do you want to try and do what we do and just make a little mini core? We'll give a best bet and then we'll head on with our day.
Let's do it. You want me to start out this time?
Yeah, why don't you start out?
Yeah, all right. Let's go. Kade Cunningham, 4.6K.
All right, I'm gonna run it back with Jaren Jackson. I was like, I'm either taking Jackson or Kade for the first one because I figured we'd be there. So we'll have Kade, in the guard slot, and then Jaren Jackson at the power forward slot. Who else should we add here?
Let's go with. Trying to think. Do we want to get cute or do we want to just? I think this is a slate to where you don't have to get cute if you don't want to, but there are definitely some ways. Let's go with Let's go with Paul George, small forward position.
All right, so you got Paul George as the spend up there, and then I will finish it off. Who do you like better, Malik Beasley or Reggie Jackson? Those are the two I was going through in that game.
Beasley. Let's go Malik.
All right, we'll
Beasley.
go Beasley.
We'll get cute.
So the final core will be Kade, Jaren, Beasley, and Paul George. And I love Paul George. He's really under-owned. I think it's just people just don't like him. I don't know why. He's the most talented, least popular guy, in current NBA. It's just so weird.
What does that leave you per position left? That core looks really nice.
Let me remake it. I was going off. I had filled out a full lineup just so I could see him. I will do it one more time. While I'm doing that, why don't you go ahead and give out your best bet today, side total or prop?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the Pacers Blazers game over 223. So I got to go back to my overs. I know it's been tough for the over bets, but I think Dame Lillard gets it right. I think there's just so much firepower, and I think with LeVert, Sabonis, I think there's enough firepower on the other side of this game too, where we're going to see a lot of baskets. So I think this is going to be one game that can get around the rules where both teams like to score the ball versus play defense. I think we're going to get offense here, and I think we're going to see the Blazers put up maybe 120 points, and maybe we'll get about 110 or so from the Pacers.
All right, and my best bet, I'll take the Milwaukee Bucks off that market move. It's down to 3.5. I like them there. I think the Knicks are a team that beats up on bad teams and can struggle against the elite teams, and that's what we'll see tonight. So I will take the Milwaukee Bucks minus 3.5 at home against the New York Knicks. And let me fill that out real quick, and I will see how much we have left. So we got Kade there. We throw in PG up top. And we had Malik Beasley, right?
Yep. Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'll just go ahead and say, over at Rumpier Sports, RPS Heater 25 is the promo code that we have going on right now. A lot of content over the weekend. NFL obviously is coming up on Sunday. You'll want to make sure that you have all the content for that. We have a really nice MMA card tomorrow. I was just looking at that today. I'm going to go ahead and order that on pay-per-view, and that's going to be a really tasty card. Titletown does our MMA content. I believe there'll be a show tomorrow as well, so make sure you catch all of that. And, we got college football, NBA, all throughout the weekend. RPS Heater 25 for 25% off your first purchase over here at Rumpier Sports.
All right, wait, we're putting Cunningham, Beasley, George. What was the last one? I'm sorry.
Jaren Jackson, Kade Cunningham, Paul George.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson. And it was my guy. How did I forget that?
Yeah.
So I've been forgetful lately. I'm going to have to go get that checked out. Jaren Jackson at 5,600. That leaves us with 25K, 6,250. So you are quite flexible with that core.
Yeah, if you put Zubac in there too at center, that's I would not be surprised if my main core looked something like that this evening.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, AP. Are you on hardwood tonight? Who's doing the hardwood show?
No, that's coming up here right now. I think in 15 minutes, I believe we have Titletown. I think we have our boy Gary, and Big T is hopping on the show today. So make sure to catch that coming up. Head over to the Rumpier Sports YouTube channel, and those guys will break down the slate.
All right, guys. Well, we spend an hour breaking down the NBA for you. All we ask is that you hit the like button, subscribe, and if you found this helpful, go ahead, share with your friends, throw it on social media. Anything we can do to get more people hanging out on the days when I can't get someone here. The chat's been so helpful. We want to keep getting more and more people in this chat. Head on over to runpurebets.com or runpuresports.com. Use the promo code GetBets. You'll get access to both AP's information and my information, best sports gambling and daily fantasy information. Bang for your buck that you can find on the internet. AP, anything else before we get out of here?
No, that's it. I think we're good.
All right. Thank you for joining me today. Let's hope this core goes well. We like the over with the Blazers and the Pacers. We like the Milwaukee Bucks to beat the New York Knicks. Thank you for hanging out. Run Pure.